Hey, I'm Jordan from Sick Bicycle Co, and today I'll be talking about my slavish and borderline creepy obsession with gearboxes on bicycles. So there's a lot of info out there, and a lot of reviews, and a lot of kind of different opinions. A great joke if you know that one of the brands that makes gearboxes is Pinion. If you don't, I guess it wasn't funny, and if you did, it probably wasn't that funny either. So from a design point of view, let's start with that. From a design point of view, gearboxes do offer a couple of great solutions to the bike builder. So let's start there. So let's talk about me. One, it's like making a single speed bike. So you only have one chain line to contend with. So that means that you only have to shoot straight right down the bike. So with a gearbox, you only have a cog at the front and a cog at the back, and that actually even allows you to run the Gates carbon drive belt, which you can go and look at, which is interesting because that doesn't even require oiling or any kind of maintenance really, and it's really quiet. So that's quite a good plus point, and certainly for commuter bikes and things like that, it makes a lot of sense. So from a design point of view, you have to do a lot less and you have to worry about hanging derailleurs or tyre clearance with the chain, because you guys all want bigger tyres and more tucked bikes, but getting the chain line good so it doesn't rub on the tyre or it doesn't rattle all over the chain stays a kind of bit of a challenging thing. So that's from the builder's perspective, you buy what is. Let's talk about exclusively talk about Pinion at the moment, but I'll talk about Effigear a bit later. Exclusively with Pinion, they sell the Pinion bridge as well, which is the part the gearbox fits into the frame. And it's actually quite nice how everything fits together in terms of build. It's very, very easy and strong, and actually pretty stiff as well because it's a big box shape, and then the gearbox goes into it and then it all bolts in. So it's quite a nice thing. You're never going to have like a creaky bottom bracket. You have to do bottom bracket servicing and things like that. So that's certainly an exciting little plus there, especially from a build perspective. They're always the same. Now the negatives for builds is everything I said that was good about it for a hardtail isn't for a full suspension bike. So that's one of the challenges, is you've got one of two things. Full suspension bikes have chain growth in a majority of the systems. So when the suspension compresses and the wheel goes up, the chain gets longer. And whilst you can reduce that and mitigate that, you're going to need something to take the slack up on the chain. And Pinion themselves sell a chain tensioner, or you can use any third-party chain tensioner. I mean, immediately, this frustrates me a bit because one of the good things about it is that a Pinion system is very quiet, and there is almost zero chance on a hardtail of ever losing your chain. You don't need special chain rings or a clutch or a chain device because it's a single, gear system. There's nothing to go wrong, so the chain can't really come off without you snapping a chainstay, or something going really, really wrong with the dropout. So when you add full suspension to the mix, immediately that's kind of a downer. So why am I still obsessing about it? Well, we worked out a couple of ways, really. One is by using a transfer ring. I'll show you what one looks like, because I've got one here. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't even prepare that. If you're on the podcast, guys, I'm really sorry. You'll have to watch the vlog on YouTube, which you can search for under Sick Bicycle Co. So this is a transfer ring. And basically what this is, you see there's two there. Once again, sorry, on the podcast you can't see it. You have to imagine. It looks like a 2-speed cassette, but both of the chain rings are the same size. Now this means that basically the chain can go up one side out of the drive, and then swap over and go down the chainstay, and that means that we can use 2 chains, but during those 2 chains we won't get a single bit of slack in the chain. So that's good. That when we worked on the Heathen project, and that was one of the first things that we developed. Of course, you end up fighting for space, and you end up with the same build problems that you have when you're running maybe a 2-speed chainring at the front. If you'd like to go into more detail with those, I'm happy if you bug me and send me an email, and I'll show you some drawings that will kind of explain it a little better. So at the moment we've got some conflicting things already, and we haven't even started talking about shifting and performance. So we get on with that. So at the moment, what we've got is 2 systems, a derailleur system and a gearbox system. The derailleur system has been the prevailing popular shifting system for a long time, and with good reason. I have a 20-year-old Kona mountain bike that I have never changed anything on, including the tyres, and they've just blown out now, 20 years later. The brake cables, the gear cables have never ever rusted away or gone wrong. I mean, I've maintained it, like oiled the chain and stuff like that. But more importantly, the thumb shifter actuated rear derailleur is still working this length of time later. So even then, why am I still interested in gearbox bikes? Well, the important thing to note is that each system has its own benefits and its own disadvantages. And they're almost like comparing V-brakes to disc brakes. Or, and I know everyone's about to laugh and go, V-brakes, all right, mate. But honestly, back in the day, like, V-brakes were such a breakthrough. I'm punning it up today. In the industry compared to cantilever brakes. But actually, in certain situations, say if you're touring the world on your mountain bike, or weight is a primary concern, I can see still, and I'll be torn apart by horses for this, where V-brakes would actually be better on a mountain bike than disc brakes in certain situations. And they're easier to service, they're more reliable, and in certain situations, caveat. If I was touring or trekking or something like that, I've had quite a few disc brake failures and very few V-brake failures, and you can kind of Heath Robinson put them back together. But I digress. These 2 gear systems are very, very different. Now, what draws me to gearboxes? Now, an element of it is it's new stuff, and I'm kind of a bit of a magpie for new stuff. I've got to admit that, so I can kind of be honest with myself. But really, it's the first time I used it. A lot of journalists have reported that when they first used the pinion gear system, that it took them a good few rides to get used to it. And I honestly, I can't understand how, because either like I'm some super rider, or I'm totally and utterly mentally divergent and I'm so stupid that I can't tell the difference between stuff. But I really found it just another type of gear system, and it worked in a different way. So now I'm going to cross the thorny issue. With pinion gearboxes, you need to use a grip shift unit, a twist throttle shift unit. And a lot of people in the cycling community have a very set, very understandable hatred of them. And that comes from one of the biggest selling products ever, which was SRAM's grip shift platform. which they hardly even use now. Now, the problem is you're not comparing like with like. In fact, it's like saying, oh, I used the first generation of RockShox Judy forks, and now I just run rigid bikes because there's no point in having forks on my downhill bike, because when I used RockShox 20 years ago, they were rubbish. The grip shift on the grip shift X-Ray, which used to get a grain of sand in it and basically explode and not be usable SRAM, versus the pinion one, which I will say, like, is probably one of the lowest quality looking grip shift units I've ever seen, and I have no idea why their gearbox looks so nice but their shifter's kind of bunk. I'm hoping they do an update or something, because it's actually very solid and it works really well, but it kind of doesn't look that good. Once you actually use a grip shift on a gearbox, it makes so much more sense, because with a rapid fire, you can have a big range of gears. The gearbox goes up to 18 gears. But imagine clicking through 18 gears on a trigger shifter up. It's like, you know, like it's like that. Whereas you can actually just twist your wrist the whole way, backwards or forwards, on the grip shift, and you can go through it. And of course, you can change gears on a gearbox when you're standing still. So when you come up to the line in an enduro race and you're like, I'm in the wrong gear, you can literally just throw your hand forwards or backwards and choose the right one. So that's a good positive there. Negative is you can't go through the gears under high loads or medium high loads. So you can't shift into an easier pedaling gear on an uphill, and that's a big holdback. But if you're the sort of person that rides with your head up and looking forward, and you know what you're doing on a trail, you'll probably anticipate it. One of the other things that is, it's kind of tit for tat. You can't change gear on a derailleur while track standing easily. Actually, my mate Richard Windus can, because he used to do an endo and then spin his like back wheel with his pedals and shift through the gears, because he's one of those kind of trialsy dudes. But if you were like coming up to a rock drop and you're in the wrong gear and you stop, you can track stand, change gear, and then drop off. So both systems have these they all have their little bits. It's just that we've used a derailleur for so long that all of its inconsistencies, all of its problems, we kind of just ignore. We're blind to them now, because that's the way it is, and that's the way you feel. So when you use a new system, it's like, oh, it's got all these problems. But derailleurs have all of those problems too. And the one thing that I find that's interesting about Pinion is everyone complains about the grip shift until they own one. And then you see that the owners, they never really mention it again. Like, honestly, you don't really see like, I love my Pinion, but I just wish I didn't have this grip shift. And you know how loud people talk about stuff before they own it, you know? So I'm guessing it's that one of those sort of things as well. So what else do I like about gearboxes? One is I'm about to take delivery of, I've just bought one for myself, of a Pinion C19XR. Isn't that an exciting name? I don't know why the industry is always so obsessed with like letters and numbers and stuff, but it does tell you what it is on the tin. The C line is Pinion's cheaper system that's got a magnesium casing on it, but it's a bit lighter than their heavier duty P series. But the 9XR is the interesting bit. It's basically a 9-speed gearbox with a similar range to their 18-speed, but they just take out half of the steps in it. Now, you see, I like this. One of the problems that I have with SRAM Eagle, honestly, is I think it has too many gears. I like the range just fine, but I'm not like a tailored road riding and cross-country kind of machine that knows the exact cadence I should be in all the time. In fact, a lot of the time, I reckon I could do with 3 gears, and I'd be like, all right, like up, down, and flat. You know, like, I'm not really like looking at my BPM, my cadence and stuff like that, and little steps between it. And a lot of the time I question people do really need that level of efficiency. You know, like if you're on your weekend ride with your mates from the golf club, you know, do you really need that efficiency on your Nomad? Probably, you know, because you're a high performance kind of guy and you've had your protein shakes, you've been to CrossFit. So, but for me, the idea of a 9-speed, massive range, at 560% gear range in a box is good. Low maintenance, thousands and thousands of miles of use, and then just do an oil change on the gearbox. That sounds nice, doesn't it? You know, every time I pick my bike up, there's never going to be some creaky, wheezy chain. You know, like I don't have much spare time, so I certainly don't spend time doing maintenance on my own bikes, because I spend maintenance time doing maintenance on your bikes, because it's like having a builder's house that's falling apart, because, you know, we're focusing on other people's jobs. So what I was looking for when I built my own personal bike, so I made a prototype which we called Headbanger, which is basically like a downhill bike geometry on a hardtail with a gearbox, 9-speed extended range gearbox, and its whole job is to be home from. I normally get it all in one shot, but I knocked my phone over. So anyway, I was saying, get home from work, flat pedals, get out, ride. You need a bike that you can kind of rely on to just be ready when you are. So that's what we were going with that project. But more than that, it's going to allow me to put in some kind of like critical hours on it, and see whether the kind of things that the journalists found that they didn't like about it, saying things like drag. They're saying they could feel this drag when they were pedaling, which I've not found, but I'm wondering if after like an extended period, if I ever start to notice it. So we'll have a little look at that, and reliability under really heavy use, because a hardcore hardtail with a gearbox in it made out of steel is going to go through some horrendous challenges. You know, I'm talking like drop-offs into rock gardens, blowing off my tyres, landing sideways from when I tried to do a whip but didn't quite really manage it, any kind of shonky lines and ladder drops and stuff that we're going to get, you know, on with. And the other thing is general tomfoolery when, you know, when we ride back through the trails in the summer, we come back through the town centre and do some stair gaps and a little bit of like janky quasi trials and stuff like that, you know, when you're bored waiting for your chips or your garlic bread, because I love garlic bread. So that's, you know, that's what we're going to go through and test with that. So what are the other kind of highlight things? You know, I kind of feel like I focused on the negative of it a bit, you know, grip shift that people don't like. Oh, the other thing with grip shift is people are saying they don't like the idea of having a grip shifter, because when they go to pull a manual or when they go to hit a jump, that they'll shift gears. It's like, it doesn't really work like that. One of the reasons is, as we said, you can't shift gear under max torque or even like high torque. So if you're pulling up like that, it's not just going to shift gears. And also the shifter is inbound. You shouldn't be riding with your hand, you know, with your 800mm wide bars because you're a big man, and then have your hand slammed against the brake levers and shifters because it's too big for you. If you're riding outside and your grip's balanced with your hands off the brakes, death gripping. So I don't think that's going to happen anyway. The other thing is, one of the things I found I liked about e-bikes, well, I didn't get a sniper kind of shoot me for that, was a lot of weight between my feet. Loads of weight between my feet. The e-bike motor and all of the batteries right low down, really, really, really heavy, right between your feet. That's super fun on a trail. Fun in the air, probably not fun climbing. We'll find out. But all of the weight off the back wheel. Like yesterday, I was at D&D Cycles, and a guy had had sent his bike in for a service, and Dave was changing over one of the tubeless tyres on an Envy rim set. Now I've just got a set of WeAre1 composite rims, so I'm guessing within reason they're probably about a similar weight. That I'm about to build up into a wheel with a Rideworks hub. But when he passed me the wheels, he took it out, And the SRAM Eagle cassette is not like massively heavy, but it does sit right in the middle of the wheel, and it was kind of jarring when he passed me the wheel that it felt so heavy and unbalanced. And I know that sounds ridiculous from something that's so expensive. Like, literally the most money you can spend at a wheel is like NV plus SRAM Eagle. You know, like, it's the most money you can probably spend on that. And I mean, Chris King hub on it as well. And it felt very heavy and unbalanced when you moved it around. So I'm interested to see what happens on a hardtail, where it should have theoretically a bit less effect. A full suspension bike, reducing the weight off the swing arm, is the #1 way of making your suspension. So we'll see how that works. That's, you know, where we're going with that. Right, now, let's switch gears. Third pun of the day. Very happy with that. Let's talk about full suspension designs. Now, obviously, we've had a big thing with full suspension and gearboxes. Definitely low weight down there, getting the weight off the swing arm, and silence. I hate noisy bikes. I used to be like well about like having a really whizzy, really loud free hub. And now kind of I'm looking for silence so I can focus on what I'm doing, and also just enjoying, you know, being on the trail. So I'm going to start experimenting with like Onyx hubs, which are silent, and using a Gates carbon belt drive, which is silent as well, no slappy roundies. So I want to kind of go with those, you know, with those things. Me and Lee have been sitting down, and he's going around in circles trying to sort out these full suspension designs for prototyping. We're trying to keep it simple, quiet, light, and have a gearbox with a full range in there. So you're starting to open up types of bikes that previously we've only dreamed of. You know, you might not, it may actually act like a downhill bike, but you'll be able to just about ride to the top. It'd be like having a, you know, kind of like a putting Eagle on a downhill bike, as nuts as that sounds. That's the way that we want to go with this prototype we're working on at the moment. And we have the two things. One, at the moment, if we use pinion, we have to use the idler wheel. If we use Effigear, and I have to go away and look at Effigear afterwards, it has two parts to it, and where the cranks go through, there's an offset. I think it's about 112mm offset, where there's a second idler and a hole through the middle of it you can put an axle through. So if you actually want to build a full suspension bike with that vertical, you can have a mid-high pivot, not a high pivot, but pretty high mid pivot with a concentric chain line around it. So we're really keen to do that. The only thing is F-Gear don't make bridges off the shelf, so you have to machine your own one. So if we want to do that, it's a long-term investment and a lot of time. So that's something we'll probably do along the line, because you should try everything. But at the moment, we're trying to solve it with Pinion, because we have an outstanding relationship with them. You know, we work backwards and forwards. They work with us on the Wolf Baron project, where people are loving those, you know. So we're going to go from there with that. And the other thing Effigear people like is it actually works on SRAM Eagle trigger shifters. I don't know how, but it does. It works fine with those. So that's something that when we're basing comparisons, we can see how things work in the real world, because we can actually use a gearbox with trigger shifters and see if our kind of ideas about that being a bad idea will work, whether grip shift will be better, and work between those. That's the fun bit of this job, is the experimentation and the kind of being able to actually test things in a real world situation. Like, you can actually do it. There's now so little time between us having a conversation, drawing something, making a prototype, and actually riding it, that we've cut our development cycles down to nothing. Now, of course, some of the times we throw money at something and it just doesn't work. So we'll hit stumbling blocks. Have Blue, we hit stumbling blocks. Heathen, we hit stumbling blocks. And Harpoon, we hit stumbling blocks. But a lot of the time, and out of 13 bikes we made in the last year, only 3 have stalled. So I'm happy with that. I mean, I don't know if any bike company does as many as that. So to sum up, If you are a cross-country whippet who weighs 8 stone and you're racing and you are competitive and you're losing seconds, a gearbox probably isn't for you. If you're a regular rider and you're ready to bury a little bit of your ego and pretending that you actually are at this level, you're not really Sam Hill actually, then maybe a gearbox will bring for you more pleasant riding experience, quieter, more exciting on the trail and descent, definitely. Lots of reliability, less time fettling with your bike. So that's the things that appeal to me. I'm old enough now that I can give up thinking that I was like, you know, that I'm going to be racing the EWS next year. But I'd like to. So if you invite me, I'll come and do it. So thanks a lot, guys. Any questions about Gearbox, jump into the comments or email me personally. That's jordan@sickbicycle.co, not .co.uk, just .co, because I have a vanity email address. I'm that kind of guy. I'm always there to talk gearboxes. And thanks very much for your time. I hope you enjoyed this. Take care. See you soon. Bye-bye.